Hello again, continuing with the series on World War II special units. And we come to a narrative history of the SOE from its earliest beginnings and origins in two other organizations in a book that covers the personalities, the organization, the training, the operations, and so on, in a very well told tale. It starts with the interview of a lady called Joan Bright, who goes along for a job which she thinks is just an ordinary civil service job. Excuse me, and she is asked to walk a circuitous route, which is basically a surveillance detection route. And then her interviewer makes it clear that it's secret work. And she has actually been recruited for Section D of SIS, which was the sabotage service. Then another part of the book concerns, or early part of the book concerns, a rather eccentric inventor who decides to invent a way of attacking certain types of targets, primarily ships, metal targets. And he comes up with a particular type of mine by going to Woolworths and buying a bowl, a few other odds and bits and pieces, uses porridge to simulate explosives, and then for a delay mechanism, his kids are eating sweets, and he realizes that aniseed balls will dissolve at a predetermined rate and then can set a time very accurately. So he combined all these things together and produced what became the limpet mine. The other part of it was magnets. He had these magnets that could attach the device to the hull of a ship. And that became adopted, including by the United States. So he was inventing all these things. Then another strand of the story is Colin Gubbins, who had a very illustrious career in World War One, and there's a whole book about him we've reviewed. And he is invited to lunch in St. Ermin's Hotel by Joe Holland. And after a long, delicious and liquid lunch, he agrees to join a special section that Joe Holland is running. It's part of the War Office, and it's called MIR. And he says, where do we work? Where's the headquarters? And with a flourish, Holland produces a key, and there's a hidden door between St. Ermin's Hotel and the offices in Caxton Place, which were used by MIR. So it really was kind of the spy novel type of Secret Service. So he goes to work for MIR, and they're closely working with Section D at this time. And his first job is to produce a manual of guerrilla warfare. And he realizes nothing on the subject, and he puts together some disparate information and includes things on how to cross obstacles, how to garrote sentries, all sorts of things. The Partisan Leader's Handbook. Another personality, Peter Wilkinson, is invited to lunch at a gentleman's club, and is wined and dined, and accepts the offer of employment because he thinks this is the life. If this is the normal lunch, I'm in. And Peter Wilkinson and Joan Bright, later married as Joan Bright Astley, were long-time staff members working to Colin Gubbins, and they wrote the biography of him, which we have reviewed. So one of the things that MIR got up to was to send a mission to Warsaw, this before the start of World War II. and 20 young officers were sent over there incognito and in this covert operation led by Gubbins. And Joan Bright goes to the station to see them off on the first part of this long journey and issues them with their cover passports in assumed identities, and is horrified to notice that the passports have been numbered consecutively. So big lapse in the prep for a secret operation. But Gubbins did make several missions to Poland, and he actually procured an Enigma machine, which was brought back, handed over to Menzies of SIS, and that became part of the war effort in the code-breaking war from Bletchley Park. There's a chapter or a section about Fairbairn, and unfortunately, and I have to say it again, the nonsense from Knights of the Floating Silk is repeated verbatim. It really has pervaded the history and tainted the actual contributions of Fairbairn. And also, the material on Fairbairn relies on writings and testimony from Bill Pilkington. Now, I'll just mention Pilkington. He was, not to put too fine a point on it, a romancer. He lived up here in Liverpool, and a good friend of mine, Terry Hagland, who was very, very noted researcher on history and also on edged weapons, used to train with Pilkey in the basement of Bill Tagg's military shop in Manchester Street, mainly private lessons on unarmed edge weapons and stick work, but sometimes with a couple of other guys. And I was actually invited to train with them. Terry invited me down there. And for some reason, I declined. I had a gut feeling that it wasn't for me. And in the book we're talking about, the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, I think I didn't mention the title. The book we're talking about is The Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare by Giles Milton. He talks about a demonstration that Fairbairn was giving in Glasgow to a class of soldiers, and a general comes in and thunders, stop this, this is brutality, this isn't how we play. And just by chance, Winston Churchill arrives and tells the general in no uncertain terms to mind his own business. Is that true? Is there any supporting evidence to that? I don't think so. Also, he, and I've got a tape of him saying this, Pilkington claims that he was on the early Norwegian campaign, and while there, he killed a Norwegian woman who he regarded as being a traitor, and killed her using silent killing techniques, and then killed saboteurs or would-be saboteurs on the Liverpool docks in a certain similar clandestine manner. Now, Bill Pilkington was able to gain credence amongst researchers. He fooled several people, and the reason for this was Terry Hagland was in touch with Colonel Applegate in America, and he put Pilkington and Applegate in touch with each other. But he introduced Pilkington to Applegate as being one of the Fairbairn cadre. So Rex Applegate accepted this at face value, and they communicated. And Pilkington sent over an article that he claimed had been written by Fairbairn, and it's the anti-invasion notes, which Applegate then promulgated quite widely, and it's been reproduced in a few places. And in it, it's supposed to have been written during this instructor program where Fairbairn and Sykes were training 12 guys to be instructors in silent killing. And it meant, there's a lot of lot of stuff that does ring true about how Fairbairn did think. But it mentions the idea of training and stick with Bill Pilkington and in the Dockers Hook with Robert Carr. Now, there's no second source for this. There's no substantiation of this or the fact that this instructor program ever actually happened. I've looked, and I'm not a great researcher, but I've never been able to find any other source except the anti-invasion notes. If anyone else has more information, I'd be glad to read it. But as far as I'm concerned, that was written by Pilkington himself to promote himself. And unfortunately, it has been accepted. And it's coloured everything since. So I always, if people tell lies about one thing, they basically can't be trusted on anything. So any testimony by Pilkington, I regard as being very, very suspect. The book, Giles Milton goes into a lot of detail about the organisation, the personalities, the operations, how the whole thing came together. It's a fascinating book. Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, just to repeat the title, which I forgot to mention. And I do recommend it very, very highly.